Hi, and welcome to the NICU Parent Network's Health Highlight. I am very excited to be here today with the Executive Director of Hope for HIE, Betsy Pilon. Betsy, you have such an incredible story that I would not even do it justice to say it myself. So I would love for you to please share with us how you started your work in this space and what that personal experience was that brought you to be such a powerhouse for HIE awareness and support and advocacy.
Thank you, Keira. It's so wonderful to be with you again as we gear up for another HIE Awareness Month in April. I have a connection near and dear, like most of us in this space, where my son Max was born in 2012 after a pretty uneventful pregnancy until he was 37 weeks when he stopped moving and was an emergency C-section. And we were thrown into a really terrifying situation. We had never heard of HIE, which means Hypoxic Ischemic Encephalopathy. So it's a mouthful of medical jargon. And we had never heard of therapeutic hypothermia, which is the only current treatment, which is basically cooling down your baby to 91 degrees to help, prevent brain injury. And that process is something that we needed to be transferred from our local community hospital to a high-level NICU to have. It only is done in level 3 and level 4 NICUs. And because it is such a process, I remember seeing the binder for this and it was like this thick for the protocol. So it's a 72-hour process. Most families like mine, have a full-term experience and, you kind of go through and, every week I think anyone that's pregnant is, you're trying to get out of the zone of having a premature baby and a NICU stay. And then this just is a whole experience that really, obviously flattens you because it's just so unexpected when it happens. And so for me, I have a background in marketing and communication and primarily in healthcare. I had worked for the health system that I delivered into. I have also worked in other large healthcare system organizations and spent a lot of my time building patient education materials, doing community outreach and things like that. So ironically, I had worked with our NICU leadership in the health system that I had delivered into and worked for to talk through like a strategy for community hospital outreach to let them know about the NICU services that were available prior to me actually, becoming pregnant and having this experience. So I did feel very comfortable knowing he was coming to get Max when he was born because I knew the protocol, the transfer protocol. I just didn't know how intense the situation was. And then in our NICU experience, he was there for about 3 weeks. And when it came to, discharge, and we got very minimal information. We were given 2 pamphlets, one for early intervention services and one for Medicaid supplemental, which I had no idea why I would ever need that. And they said, "Hey, do you have any other questions?" I said, "Yes." Like, do you have educational information on what just went through what we had gone through? And are there other families you can connect me to?
Yeah.
And they said, "We don't know of anything, try not to go home and Google, just love on your child and follow up." So as someone that created medical information for patients to help them understand difficult diagnoses and treatments, it was definitely for me a call to action when we discharged from the NICU. And when I got home, I Googled and found 3 families that were all pointing me to Hope for HIE, the Facebook group, which at the time was about 200 to 300 families from all around the world. Everyone had a very similar story that, they felt very isolated and alone. It's very odd to, and continues to this day of, like the medical folks saying, wow, you have the biggest baby in the NICU. And yes, but that's not helpful. Like families are like, okay, that makes me feel additionally like I don't belong here and that this is unusual and left without understanding most times, why that is. And, And,
Right.
like anything through trauma, and the trauma of the NICU, finding a community is really essential for parent mental health.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know why you're coming about the size of the baby. I mean, it doesn't matter what the size of the baby is. Has no indication on the severity of what that child is experiencing. And, one thing that really struck me when you and I first met, because first of all, I had never heard of HIE, and I've been in this space for 12 years. And I'd never heard of it until you joined the NICU Parent Network. And you didn't exactly know what the diagnosis was at first, right? Like
yeah.
they didn't say this is HIE.
Yes. And so, 2023, we've come a long way over the past almost 11 years since, my introduction.
Yeah.
But yes, there continues to be barriers to that. And, unfortunately in the US, like have such a large litigious situation. And there is a percentage of HIE that can be prevented. And unfortunately, it is not the majority of cases,
Mhm.
but it has scared people from naming the diagnosis
Hmm.
many times because we've heard this as feedback of like, why don't you tell parents? Like, why, and so that has been shifting with the work that we've done over the past, decade, but it is still continues to be problematic. And again, families, it's key medical information for their kids, and not having it creates all sorts of barriers. There's, inequity in follow-up. There's also something that we're tackling and we talk about a little bit later is there has not been work done on what the optimal long-term follow-up should look like, what that cadence looks like. HIE has such a wide range of outcomes and impacts. So you have kids that, are diagnosed officially according to a scale of mild, moderate, and severe. And you'll have kids that have, either minimal or no impacts, but you'll have kids that, because it's a neurological diagnosis, an insult to the brain, that you won't know until they're into school. And I know this is very similar for, preemies or any other neonatal neurological issue. You many times won't know the impacts until years down the road. And by that point, a lot of people are out of any follow-up they had, or they're told you're going to be fine, move along.
Right.
And in fact, we have many families that come back and say, oh, yep, we're back.
Mm.
And we wish we would have been told this in this way from the onset, not to create more anxiety, but because families need to know information about risk levels for things. HI has a lot of different impacts. The most common is HIE is the leading cause of neonatal seizures. I know we've done, a little bit of education with NPN on neonatal seizures. So HIE is the top cause of neonatal seizures, and that can turn into epilepsy. HIE is a leading cause of several rare types of epilepsy, one called infantile spasms that can impact babies most often between 4 and 8 months. So education from the NICU about that is really, really important
Yeah.
because getting it identified and treated aggressively with frontline treatments is really essential to the long-term well-being for those babies. And it's a leading cause of cerebral palsy. It's, learning and attention, a lot of the things that you see from those early developmental issues in the NICU. And again, a lot of similar crossover between things like IVH on the premature side and PVL. It's just a different manifestation of a neurological injury.
Right. And knowledge is power. And when we talk about how important it is as parents, to feel empowered so that we feel confident in advocating for what our child needs, we need that knowledge. So I'm so thankful that Hope for HIE exists and that you have really become such a just such a champion in this space. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly is HIE for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah. So HIE, so broken down again, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. So quite a mouthful to say. It is a lack of oxygen restricting blood flow that affects the brain. And again, there's a wide range of severity and causes. So, some of the most common causes are placental abruption, uterine rupture, cord compression during labor, and again, a lot of this is not preventable. Birth is a crazy process, and there's just a lot of factors that go into it, or placental insufficiency. So there's a lot of us, like my story with Max, where our placenta just started dysfunctioning and finally gave out, cutting off oxygen to our baby. So and a lot of stillbirth is from HIE. So it's really something that a lot of ours are kids that were saved from lack of fetal movement, and you go in and have an emergency C-section. So there's just a wide variety of causes. Uncontrolled gestational diabetes. We have kids that'll be born, and then have seizures that then again cause, a lack of oxygen, right at birth and things like that. So just a wide variety of causes. And so far, the main treatment is therapeutic hypothermia, and that's again cooling down the baby to 91 degrees for 72 hours. And that has only been studied in moderate to severe babies. It has decreased the mortality and level of disability of a lot of kids, but again, still has a lot of work. HIE still remains the second leading cause of infant mortality worldwide, which is huge. So there's a lot of work to do. So that's kind of the basics of HIE. There's also, pediatric acquired cases of near SIDS, or, we also support families of like near fatal drownings and things like that, just because there isn't a lot of support on the pediatric side either.
Right. So you said that when you were first looking for support, you found a Facebook group that had about 200 to 300 families. So tell us about Hope for HIE today and how it's grown, and how you went from that Facebook group to now a really global organization.
Yes. So I think power to the parents is the story. And, I know that's NPN's story as well, and so many of the membership organizations. Yeah. Hope for HIE, the Facebook group, was started by 3 parents that came together in 2010. I think they found, this is like an evolution of social media too. They found each other on like Yahoo groups and then created Hope for HIE, a Facebook group with the intention to become a nonprofit organization. And then in 2013, I, with some other families, they kind of passed the torch and said, take this and run with it. And so we looked, we're kind of an inside out organization. We had this global scope, but where do we plant a flag on the ground? So I was fortunate to have a lot of very passionate and supportive family and friends, who are very talented, and were able to help kind of figure out, with ease, starting it locally to us, but again, having that global reach and always focusing on connecting people globally, as you might see by our by our theme for this upcoming HIE Awareness Month. And so over the past, really 10 years, we officially, we applied for the 501c3 in 2013, confirmed in 2014. In the first few years, tiny grassroots, just trying to make the internet a happier place for people to find information, we were unable to find. So the first few years were developing a website and are building out our social presence, and creating a tiny trifold to see if we could convince NICUs to give this out to families and say, we've got this peer support organization that we think is pretty special and important for families. And I'm sure this in this space as well. We had a lot of kickback that said, we see a lot of organizations start and close. We don't want to refer unless we know that you are established. So that was really kind of the pushback for the first few years. And then in 2019, things really shifted for us. So we had grown to, through our own grassroots efforts, grown to support 4,500 families. So we had a pretty significant escalation over 5 years of connecting families. And then once we had kind of this report out of analyzing some of our data and our unmet needs that families were expressing, putting that into a report, and then sending that out, then that got attention. Graphs and data and everything really started captivating the neonatal neurology community. So we were asked to participate with the neonatal seizure registry as a patient organization partner, which I know Hand to Hold has been a part of, and some other NICU organizations. And because HIE is the leading cause of neonatal seizures, so it made a lot of sense to be a part of that. And then we just started getting more and more opportunities as people started hearing more and more about our organization. And so I shifted at the end of 2020 from, we had enough resources to go from all volunteer to me taking on this as my full-time role. And then we've just been able to, again, escalate up. And in a pretty short period of time, we are doing very exciting things, always focused on ultimately supporting families first and foremost, but also being able to build out the advocacy side. So I really see us as a dual aim organization now. First and foremost, supporting families longitudinally along their journey, all ages and outcomes. Unfortunately, mortality and loss is a significant part of our population. And so really we focused on kind of these bookends of newly diagnosed families and supporting our lost families. And then again, anything and everything in between. And then on the advocacy side, it's a really, I would say that the acceleration for research is really remarkable and happening these past couple of years. So we have there's 2 clinical trials that are going to be started for HIE this year. One looking at the safety and efficacy of mild HIE, which is a population that has been excluded for now 20 years, right. That we know has impacts. And then the other is a promising therapeutic. So we're, partnering on the industry side as well to look at, can this be the next cooling? What else is out there? And there's many, many other researchers that are, kind of in this renaissance of looking at HIE and finding, what would be the next solution or targeted therapeutic that can help, from birth onward. There's always going to be work, ultimately to decrease the incidence of HIE, but certainly decreasing the impact, if we can do any of that, it's huge.
Wow. Well, I mean, Betsy, it's just phenomenal what you guys have been able to do over the last several years. So let's jump to Awareness Month. So tell us
Absolutely
all about how it got started, how people can get involved. You have just an incredible month of programming. So I'm excited for you to share about that.
So we first got started in 2016 with launching Awareness Month because was nothing in the space. And so we thought we'd create something that we could engage our community, elevate the needs and the advocacy points that we as an organization and community of families see. And again, just trying to get out the word that we exist, that, about our services that we offer families, about our advocacy initiatives. And so every year we've picked a theme, and this year is Connected by Hope. So, and really kind of showcasing the many ways that families connect in person, offline, with their health, their medical teams or educational teams, all sorts of things. And every year we host kind of a weekly Q&A about HIE, about the latest trends in research, about, just basics of HIE, sharing patient and family perspectives, and really looking at, who we are as a community, and making sure that people, are aware of the needs to help us continue moving this work forward. So we have a website, HIEawarenessmonth.com. We host, we list all of our events there. We have a comprehensive toolkit for people to get, involved in many different ways. There's different social media days. There's different things you can do to, reach back out to your NICU and talk about. And we encourage people to do so. We've had people, get HIE Awareness Month declared officially in their states, their provinces. We've had buildings lit up for HIE Awareness Month, all sorts of different things, kind of anyone that's in this space knows there's so many different tools that you
Yeah,
can try to implore. And
absolutely.
so, yeah, so it's a really, it's a month that our community is proud to take up space and show their lived experiences, and what is most important to them in this as well. So we're excited to have this year's Awareness Month happening again in April, and just sharing again, and trying to move forward the cause.
Yeah. So again, that website is HIEawarenessmonth.com.
Yep.
And so folks can go there, find out all the information, what they can do either locally or online, to help celebrate. I think that's just really phenomenal. And I'm so happy that that you started that. I mean, like I said, it's something I'd never heard of. And I know I'm not alone in that. So thank you so much to you and your team for just all of the hard work. Is there, are there any final thoughts or anything else you wanted to make sure to mention, or any, with those, you said you're doing weekly Q&As.
Mhm.
Is that like with healthcare partners
Yes.
or with families? Okay.
Yep. So we have a pretty dynamic multidisciplinary medical advisory board. And so it's with members of that as well as other physicians and clinicians that we work with. So, the first upcoming one is with Dr. Pia Wintermark. She is a researcher and physician in Canada who has just done incredible work with HIE in both the research space and support space. So she in education, we've partnered with her on several different projects, and making things more accessible with languages. So you'll see that we're building out as many resources as we can to be as accessible as possible, in the various languages that people speak around the world, and just trying to again be a wraparound support service. So, I'm really proud that we've added in, last year we brought a social worker on board. This year we're adding child life services. So, really, again, looking at this support, we know, and that, support is not equal everywhere. And so, especially like in the US, I mean, I feel like we're very resourced, but if you're not at a children's hospital, many times you're not going to get as much support, I feel, overall. And children's hospitals traditionally have like child life specialists and that social work support. So if you don't have that, we, have been grateful to be able to bring that to our community. So just some things like that, where it's, we've always had a big support, peer-to-peer support program. But we've been able to really bring on initially those resources to provide that really comprehensive, consistent support for our families.
That is fantastic. Well, Betsy, thank you so much. So again, one more time for everybody, HIEawarenessmonth.com, kicking off on April 1st. So thank you so much, Betsy, again to you and your team for all of the hard work you do. And we are really looking forward to celebrating this month with you.
Thank you so much for your support.